All right, y'all. We back in SLC with it, man. These women are cinema. For this to be literally one whole scene for the entire episode, for it not to be boring, there's nobody doing it better than them. Like they literally are crazy. Angie, this was crash out mode. Like this was kind of wild. Angie looked the craziest out of everybody, if you asking me. But yeah, if you're new here, hit subscribe. Do that real quick. Thumbs up the video. Also, get in the comments. Once you get in the comments, swipe to the right, hype the video. Hype the video. It helps push the video out even more. It helps with the thumbs up, but it helps hype it out. So do that real quick. Get in the comments. Let me know y'all's thoughts. I know y'all got a lot. It was crazy. But we're not going to waste no time. Let's go. And I genuinely don't know how I'm going to get through this because it took me 2 hours to watch this episode because I was laughing so hard. But we start off with Whitney, and my thing is bouncing. Let me get up here. We start off with Whitney at home with Justin, and she's talking about how she just wants to have a girls' day to celebrate love and friendship. I said, yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. Not realizing how crazy it was going to get. But everybody gets their flowers delivered as their invites. And then we see Whitney arrive to the event. And this is where it started and it stayed for the rest of the episode. But Heather arrives first. Mary comes next. She's like, I don't know why Whitney would have this event here because apparently the owner had killed his wife and killed himself there on Christmas Day in front of the dog. I said, wow. But Brittany and Angie, they arrived next, and Bronwyn and Meredith arrived next. And these two had the most over-the-top outfits. They both are wearing floral outfits. And it's floral themed, too, because they're out there doing wine tasting as well. But Lisa, of course, is last to arrive. And when she gets there, Lisa says that, well, she tells us this in her confessionals, that she wanted to support Whitney. But Angie's been so nasty, and she's done taking the high road. I said, this is where it's all about to start. But she gets on in there, and Meredith's energy is off, obviously, because we know that the last time she had been around Lisa, well, not even the last time she'd been around Lisa. The last time we seen her on TV, she was talking to Angie about Lisa. So she tells us she hasn't spoken to Lisa since she met up with Angie, and she talks about how hard they've worked to get to this space in their friendship, but even if this shit did happen that Angie was talking about, it's not acceptable. But Whitney, she makes her toast, talking about how she hasn't been happy and whatever, how she used to be, and she wants to get back to the old Whitney. She lets them know that she had flew an intuitive out from New York to give them readings. Most are excited about it. Mary's like, I'm a pass. And Mary didn't even get to it unintentionally. She didn't even get to her. She didn't even get to get read. But I don't think it was intentional the way it happened. Well, of course it wasn't, but it just happened to where she didn't have to deal with it. But Whitney, she takes them all to sit down so they can start tasting the wine. So Angie then starts talking about her house being up for sale. Brittany is looking it up, talking about it's gorgeous, but there's a price adjustment. That's not good. She ain't lying. But they didn't hear her initially when it happened because Brittany was talking, but they weren't listening, of course. But Angie starts talking about how she's going to be essentially moving into Whitney's area. She might end up getting a property, getting horses and goats and whatnot. And Lisa's over there making side comments. Well, not even a side comment. She was making the comments so Angie could hear, but Angie was ignoring her. Lisa's like, I could be a farmer. Brittany then asks Angie why you didn't reach out to me about selling your house. You know, I'm a real estate agent. Brittany's like, Angie's like, my godson's mother is as well. Like, I just met you. Like, I don't blame Angie. Like at that point, if I got somebody who I'm very well connected with, have a long relationship, I would much rather trust them over you first, especially considering how Brittany moves in her own natural life, let alone her business. But Brittany says, I just asked. I think it's listed a little high, and it's been listed for 200 days. That was crazy. But Angie gets defensive, obviously, because she picks up what Brittany's doing. And she's talking about how Brittany don't know anything about homes. You don't know nothing about the homes in my neighborhood because it's the most prestigious zip code in Salt Lake City. So Brittany's like, I live in the most prestigious. Like, so they start going back and forth about who lives in the richest area. But Lisa, of course, starts naming off the list of the areas in Salt Lake City, and she didn't name any of what Brittany was talking about or Angie. But Brittany then goes back to talking about the price adjustment and how it's a bad sign. And Angie's like, what's a bad sign? Like, if your house is on the market for some time, you do a price adjustment. And Brittany's like, you should have priced it correctly the first time. You would have got multiple offers. So Angie's like, you don't get it when it's listed at $4 million. Brittany says you will, and you will if it's in an area like you stated, like super, super high priced and well off. You're gonna get a lot of offers. But Angie then says Brittany's clueless, and of course, like I stated, of course she's offended because that's basically that's Brittany's profession too, because Brittany was offended by her stating that. But she calls Jared. Jared apparently had called mid argument. But Whitney then says that you told me that you was gonna take 30 days off from Jared, which we all knew that was not gonna happen, and Whitney knew that too. But Brittany states that they're back together. Everybody's like, ugh. But Mary then asks if it's even been 30 days, and she's like, no, it's just been 24 hours. No shock there. Like, Brittany ain't shit. Like, when it comes to her being a parent, like, yes, she's funny and whatnot, and she's entertaining for the show, but when it comes to her parenting skills, like, no. But Whitney then brings up Jared coming to the house to talk to Justin, and Whitney was like, I mean, he feels like you essentially got back with him, or get back with him whenever you need like a vacation or you need trip, basically when you need some money. So Brittany's mouth dropped. Like, he's sitting here talking shit about me. Lisa says I would have broke up with him immediately just for that reason. But Bronwyn then says like the irony of her calling me a gold digger when she's literally the one that's the gold digger. But Whitney then asks Brittany if he's paid for any vacations or whatnot. And Brittany was like, yeah, he took me to Vegas. Heather was me. Heather was like, that's not a vacation. We all know they live in Utah. Utah is right there next to Nevada. That's not really, that's not much of nothing. That's not too much money. But Brittany then says it's the fact that he's talking shit about me to my friend's husband. And she's now crying at this point. And I'm like, you knew he did that shit because you watched last season and he was all but pretty much dogging you out then too. But she says it sucks because he painted her out to be some type of gold digger when she was the one that was prioritizing him, and it could have affected her relationship with her daughter. And I said, whose fault is that? And we know you don't give a fuck about your daughter. Honestly, like, let's keep it real, because if you did, you wouldn't be dealing with Jared. Well, you know that's not what she wants. But Wind is knocking vases over. And they're like, that's a sign, Brittany. Yeah, it is. It definitely is. But she's sitting there crying, talking about, we love each other. We love each other. I said, yeah, he's talking shit about you. Like, but Whitney then says, like, do you want to go first with Terrence, the person that's reading the cards? But she takes her in to go get a read. She introduces Brittany to Terrence. She walks back off to the girls. And Meredith is there telling the girls that there's some stuff that she wants to discuss because she has some concerns. We all know she's talking about Lisa. So she talks about Lisa and her making that, her and Lisa making a commitment once they got back to being cool and being friends again to be direct with each other. And she tells her that she has an issue to ask her about. So she didn't ask Lisa, were you spreading negative rumors about my family? Of course, Lisa says no. She says, even last year, I worked really, really hard on being a better friend when it came to you. So I don't know what this is about, but she's looking over at Angie, and Angie's sitting there with a smirk on her face. And Lisa's like, but I can clearly see that Satan might know what's going on. I say, here we go. And literally, here we go. This started, and we didn't get to the end of this until the end of the episode. So buckle up. But Angie's shaking her head saying that she doesn't work in the, like, I don't work in the dark. I do my work in the light. So Lisa says, I mean, I pride myself on being direct. And I like to think that I was careful not to say anything negative about you, Meredith, to Angie. So Lisa says, I mean, unless it was made up. Angie says, I don't make things up. Lisa says, I think you do, because if you're telling her this, that is made up. So Terrence is in there asking Brittany, and she feels disconnected from anybody in her life. And she says her daughters, and then she's talking about how she got chills or whatever, because how would he know? The producers were on it because they showed all the clips of her talking about her issues with her daughter. All he had to do was watch the show. But back with Lisa and Angie. Angie says the biggest thing that she's realizing, or at least that she's realized now, is that Lisa, Lisa ends up cutting her off. Lisa says, you going behind my back, trying to impact my relationships, being nasty. So Angie says, is that what I do? Lisa says, clearly, like, if that makes you feel comfortable, go right ahead, because I really don't give a fuck. We know you give a fuck, Lisa. And she says, you're a fucking bully. So Angie then says, I mean, I haven't said anything that wasn't factual. Lisa says, you talked pretty shitty about my kids. And Angie's sitting there talking about something. I haven't said one thing about your kid, Angie. You talking about his business is talking about him, because that's an extension of him. But Lisa says, you talked about his fucking brand. And Meredith then tells him to stop talking about the kids. But I mean, at this point, they have to talk about the kids because it was brought up. Like, that's literally what it is. That's the issue. But Brittany, she comes in and sends Bronwyn in there to go talk to Terrence. Lisa is now telling Meredith, on God, I didn't say nothing negative about you to Angie. So Heather's not understanding Meredith overlooking, because Meredith didn't really bat an eye after Lisa stated that. And she don't understand how Meredith is not like bothered by this, because we all know how dramatic Meredith is. Meredith needs to be on a soap opera. Like, her dramatics would work perfect. But my whole thing is with Heather, I'm like, Heather is bothered by Meredith not being bothered because I feel like Heather wants Meredith to not want to be cool with Lisa so that Heather can squeeze on in there and be the top best friend for Lisa. That's what I got from it. But Angie then says that I brought it to Meredith because after the event, and she's talking about Lisa's event, she's like, I mean, I thought that we left on good terms. I thought that you cared about me. Then I come home to this text about you pretty much sending your assistant in to get these products. So Lisa cuts her off and says, like, I sent Sage in just to get the product and told her not to say anything besides I'm here to get the products. And then Angie says, well, let me go get that dusty product, which I can believe. I can believe Angie said it. But Bronwyn gets her reading and he's pretty much telling her like, it's something about your mom. Like she's got something going on that she's not really paying attention to and it's health wise and possibly another surgery that might be hard to recover from. Obviously Bronwyn's getting emotional because that is her mom at the end of the day. And he tells her that her mom is her biggest supporter. Even though it might not seem that way, I said, bullshit. Everything that her mother is doing, take it for what it is because she ain't hiding that. Like, she's not her biggest supporter. She's her biggest hater. But he tells her to make peace with that relationship. I said, hell no. Don't listen to him, Bronwyn. And it's like, you can state that because that's her mother, but like, her mom is her worst enemy. Like, let's keep it real. Absolutely not. But back with Lisa and Angie, they over there yelling now. Yelling. Angie then reads a text from Lisa about how she pretty much told Angie, like, I don't borrow money to take vacations using somebody else's card that I never should have been using to begin with. I found it funny how Lisa's now talking about using somebody's card when the whole shit started about everybody stating that Lisa is using somebody else's card. But Lisa's in her confessional stating that she was told that Angie was using somebody else's credit card to go on a trip to Europe and she had to write a check to pay it back. I said... And she's like, I mean, if she gonna say some nasty shit about me, I'm gonna say it too. I'm like, you know what? I mean, you got a point. But Angie then pulls out her company card and says, this is my company card, bitch. And she said, it's a black card. So she starts throwing the cards. And Lisa's like, that's not a flex. That's not a flex. So Angie's pulling out all her cards. This is this card, that card, this card, that card. I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, you crazy because these are your cards. And you got Brittany over here, who you cannot trust. Brittany probably over there trying to, y'all know how she do with the camera. She probably over there getting that card, taking screenshots, taking pictures. Crazy Angie. But she throwing them cards out. She then brings out a black Amex bracelet that she could swipe to charge with. Flexing on them. But Mary tells her to stop throwing her shit and put that shit back in the purse. I said, exactly. Like, put your shit back in the purse. But Heather's picking up the card, looking at it and stuff, like I told you. And then Brittany picks up a card, telling myself, can I use this? I said, but Lisa and Angie, they going back and forth. Angie's now standing up. Y'all know how she get down. Standing up, telling her to shut the fuck up, shut your fucking mouth. Lisa says, I'm not going to do it. So Angie tells Lisa that she going to pull her... She said, I'm going to pull your ears further back than they were pulled when you got your facelift. Lisa says, so you're jealous of my face now? And Angie says, like, you've been looking... Angie says, you look like you've been in a wind tunnel. And Brittany, Whitney, and Heather were laughing. Brittany and Whitney laughing. I mean, well, Brittany, because Brittany, you claim that you and Lisa are like this now, so you shouldn't be laughing that damn hard. But Whitney laughing, of course. But Heather was she was really cracking up, and I was like, that's not best friend behavior. But Lisa says, you want to go dark? You want to stand up now? Why are you standing up? What are you standing on, shorty? That had me so tickled. I can't explain why it did. But Angie says, are you taller than me? Lisa says, yeah, 3 inches, shorty. I was cracking up at this point. But Angie sits down and she says, I'm going to sit down and tell you. And Lisa says, well, I'm going to sit down and tell you, as she's already sitting down. I said, Lisa, please. She's like, we are not friends. I said, that's clear, crystal. But they start going back and forth again. Heather goes in to get her reading now. So Lisa and Angie, they still going back and forth. Whitney's up there trying to stop them, and they still going. But Bronwyn's sitting there crying because she done came back from her reading. As I told y'all, she was emotional, hearing everything, basically telling her that, as we all know, her father's already has, his health is literally taking the biggest decline. And then now hearing the shit about your mom, even though y'all's relationship ain't so great, like, I mean, that's a lot to take in at one time. But Bronwyn, like I said, Bronwyn's sitting there crying. Nobody's noticing. Meredith finally notices and she starts screaming, hey! Like, y'all don't even see that she over here crying right now. So they finally calm down. And Bronwyn tells them that both of her parents are struggling health-wise. She talks about how scary it is, that he's telling her essentially you need to make peace with your mom because it might possibly be the last time you with her. But she then tells Angie and Lisa, like, don't go so low. Like, at this point, she basically like, life ain't promised. Like, let it go. But Lisa and Angie, they get back to arguing. Whitney was like, y'all need to, like, come on. So she tells them to go over to the pond, but they still sitting there arguing while everybody's sitting there consoling Bronwyn at this point. And Whitney's still trying to stop them. But Angie then tells Lisa that she's a cunt. And Bronwyn's like, no, because y'all know how white women get with that word. But Angie then tells her to pick up her black card and go to Nordstrom, telling Lisa that. And Lisa says, honey, I don't shop there. You do. Angie says, you don't. Your boyfriend shops for you. I was like, and Lisa says, what about that soup man? And she gets up, what about that soup man, bitch? And they go back and forth. I was like, what are they talking about? But it was so funny because Angie's like, what soup man? But Mary was like, I'm starving. Talking about soup. They ain't got no food out here. But Whitney then drags Angie off, and Brittany is now trying to take Lisa off. Lisa accidentally goes in there and walks in there while Heather's getting her reading, talking about some whoops. I was cracking up. But Lisa then walks over there to Angie and is telling her, don't be talking behind my back. Angie then asks her, like, why are you sitting here stating that I'm using somebody else's credit card? So Lisa's like, I mean, I believe that you went to Greece and you were using somebody else's card and had to pay the shit back. So Angie then says, my cards are in my name. These are my cards. And she then starts asking Mary to come bring her cards. Mary says, I ain't bringing you them cards because I don't want you throwing them in the water. Because at this point, Angie, like I told you, she's about 2 steps from a crash out. And who's to say that she won't start chucking shit just because? Which, like what Mary stated, you could throw them cards in that water. But Whitney then says to Lisa, you're saying this, but how is it any different than Angie talking about you with the whole credit card situation, like I said earlier? But Angie and Lisa, they still going back and forth. So the wine lady comes over there and is telling them, I got some more wine, and they not paying attention. But Mary's like, oh, great. But Lisa then says Angie is everything that she's accusing her of. So Heather's taking Lisa off now to go get her reading. So everybody else is back at the table. And Brittany's sitting there asking about Heather's reading. And of course, she feeds him a bunch of bullshit, talking about something. He said, I'm the richest person here, yada, yada. They all laughing because they know it's bullshit. But Lisa's in there getting her reading. And he's pretty much asking her, why does she feel like essentially she's rebuilding trust with John? She immediately starts crying because that's how you know it's true. But he then tells her, like, y'all need to figure it out, like how to communicate, get back on the same page because y'all are on different pages. And she's like, I feel like that's true. So he's right. But he then says, like, he just don't know how, essentially, at least Lisa don't know how to get back on that same page with him. But she's crying in her confessionals, talking about how hard marriage is and how John's her best friend. That's her person. But Terrence is like, y'all just aren't on the same team at this point. I said, that's not good. Because y'all got to always be on the same team. Even if y'all don't agree in certain moments, you still got to be together. Y'all still got to be the united front. Like, y'all got to be on the same team. But Lisa says in her confessionals, they're on different pages completely. And they show flashbacks of them disagreeing on certain things completely disagreeing. But Lisa then says, like, sometimes she feels alone. And I'm like, uh-oh. But back outside, Heather, she asked what she missed when she was in there getting her reading. And there was, like, a lot of screaming, like, for real. But Angie then says, Lisa says things about me and I have to just sit here. Like, y'all just want me to just sit here. Whitney was like, I mean, you're going back and forth digging stuff up. And Angie's like, I'm not digging anything up. Whitney's like, relax. I'm on your side. Like, I'm on your side. I'm having your back. And Angie's like, oh, I'm sorry. But Heather then says to Angie, but Lisa's always been this way. You were with her when she was doing this shit, like digging up other shit. You was with her while she was doing this. So now for you to sit here and say that you have had enough, that's crazy. And Mary's like, amen. Because it is true. Because it's like, you only have a problem when it's done to you, but you didn't have a problem when it was done to other people, which is true. But Angie's sitting there stating, I've never dug anything up. Mary says, we know that. But when Lisa was doing it, you accepted it. You was cool with it because you was actually friends with her. When she's friends with you, you okay with it. But when she's not friends with you, then you have a problem with it. Mary and Heather was on it. But Angie then says to Mary, you got to hear this. You got to hear this. And Mary's like, no, you got to hear me. Because I'm talking. You too busy trying to tell us what we need to hear, but you don't listen. Like, you want us to listen. You want somebody else to listen. But when it's time for you to listen, you don't listen. And she was like, I mean, I'm sitting here saying when you were friends with her, you went along with the shit. And that's the truth. But Lisa comes back. Whitney then sends Angie off to get her reading. Lisa sits down and says, what did I miss? More about my face and my business. And she was like, I don't have a faceless. I have 12 threads on each side. I don't know what that is. Whatever that means, whatever that means. But Angie's in there getting her reading, and it's pretty much about her business expansion. And he's constantly hearing products and whatnot. And she's like, how did he know this? How did he know this? The only people that knew it was Sean, the lecturer, and the designers, like the business partners. So she says she got chills. But back at the table, Whitney then asked Lisa how her reading was. Lisa said, I mean, he hit on things that were spot on with John, and I thought it was good. Just that simple. She ain't divulged into what it really was about. So Whitney, obviously, in her confessions was like, I just don't get what it is with Lisa. She just don't want to be vulnerable. She don't want to tell us anything. She don't want to open up. Why would she? Like, I don't blame Lisa for not telling them. Like, she don't know who she can trust in this group. And at that point, I wouldn't be telling y'all my business either. I wouldn't be vulnerable with y'all. But Whitney then asked, like, what did he say about friendships? Lisa says he pretty much talks about how, like, I just get burned. I have so much love for all these people. I always put myself out here for them, and I always do things for them, and it just never works out for me. I don't believe it, because Mary was me. Mary said he said that. Like, please. And I was like, exactly. But Lisa says, I'm paraphrasing. I said, no, you're embellishing. You're adding more to the story. But Angie comes back. Meredith goes in, and they're talking about Angie's reading now. And Lisa then asks Angie if she feels bad about anything that she said. Angie says, I already apologized. Bronwyn said, but you talked about her kids' products. Angie said, I mean, Lisa talks about your husband having gout dick. I don't know what it is about that phrase. Gout dick makes me laugh because I started laughing. But Bronwyn then says, don't go low. Lisa says, I mean, I already apologized about telling her that she sucks gout dick. That shit made me laugh. But they start going back and forth again. I was like, Jesus. But Lisa is now screaming, talking about Angie. You started this shit. When you sit and think about it, she kind of did. Like, when we talking about this season, she definitely did. But Lisa gets up talking about something. I could go solo right now, but you got the thinnest skin. I said, both of y'all do. Because y'all both are so bent out of shape over hearsay. Like, that's the epitome of thin skin. But Lisa gets up, walks off stating that she's done. Whitney's walking off with her. But Lisa says, like, I don't have a facelift. I said, thin skin. Like, she said, she's talking about your facelift. And you sitting here bothered by it. But Mary's over there now trying to talk Lisa down. She's like, Whitney, come on, let me talk to her. She the right person to talk to her, because if anybody's going to be somebody that you can listen to, it would be Mary. Because Whitney, you can't trust Whitney because Whitney is low-key enjoying the mess. Mary's the one that's going to talk some sense into you. But Mary's over there trying to talk her down. And Lisa's like, she's jealous. Like, she's just a fucking jealous bitch. And she just won't stop. But back at the table, they're over there tasting wine. But Mary's telling Lisa, you got to find some way to solve this shit. Like, y'all got to fix it. And Lisa's like, I mean, Angie's a toddler. She's 5 years old. You act the same way. But Meredith, she's getting her reading. Angie goes in there to get her box that she brought in initially and stuck it under the table. She brings the box out and puts it on the table. She starts pulling out all these horses and then beat it tequila. So it's all this shit that Lisa done gave her. So basically, she's like, you wanted to take your products back. I'm going to take all this shit back that you done gave me. So she pulls out all that shit. And Bronwyn was like, it's not even the return for me. It's the fact that Angie still got the seal on the Vita tequila, basically stating she never wanted that shit to begin with. I died laughing because it's true. It's like, damn. Like, you had that shit for 2 years and you ain't even drank it yet. And then Bronwyn was like, I ain't gonna lie to you because I still got the seal on mine too. I said, y'all ain't shit. But Brittany's like, not giving the gifts back. Angie says, you might want to try and do the same thing because it might work out your relationship. I said, damn, Angie, because it was true though. It was true though. But Mary's in there telling Lisa to pretty much lead with positivity, and Lisa took it all in. But they head back to the table. Lisa then sees the returns, and she's telling Angie, like, you just don't get it. Like, you're just that upset that I'm just working with Kara Stiles. And Angie says, are you? And Lisa's like, are you digging? Like, you're not trying to look it up and see if I'm into it? Angie was like, no, because you're not. Lisa says, so who's my best friend then? Heather's sitting there looking. You can tell Heather wanted to hear her name so bad. But Angie says, after a long pause, she says, Ben Affleck? I said, y'all are crazy. But Lisa then says, you have no idea. Let's call the head of Kara Stiles and I'll tell her how upset you are. I said, how childish are y'all? But Bronwyn then says, like, you both have good hair. Like, who cares? The only person sitting here with bad hair is Brittany. I said, here we go. But Brittany was like, no more shading my hair. But Whitney, she's in there getting her reading now about shutting down the last few years about her business and whatnot. But Bronwyn's back in there telling them just apologize and just end the shit. Honestly, even though this shit was entertaining, it's time to move on. But Lisa then says, like, I need to go. And she walks off and leaves. Lisa's walking through as Whitney's getting her reading, and Whitney is already in tears. And she waves by like, I'm out of here. She goes and gets in her car and drives off. So Angie, she back over there tweaking at this point. She crying now too, saying that I'm not just gonna sit here and let Lisa sit here and sling mud at me. She's not gonna sit here and keep bullying me. And she then starts throwing shit. She's so mad. She's throwing shit. And Mary's like, come on now. But Mary cracked me up in her confessional, because you know how the tarot card reader, he was in there talking about the horses getting injured. And she brought in a toy horse that she just threw. And Mary said, yeah, he was right about them horses. It was Electra's horse. She was like, it was just the wrong horse that got injured. She was cracking up laughing, and I was too. But Angie's now standing up crying about Lisa. And Mary's telling her, like, you need to calm down. Like, she over there trying to calm her down. Mary walks over there and tells her, like, nobody cares. Because Angie's talking about my reputation's looking like this, and this. And I'm like, who cares what people think? If you know it's not true, then why are you so bothered by it? And that's literally what Mary said. Who cares? We know who you are. Like, stop trying. It's not that deep. Like, you making it too deep. I'm like, exactly. That's why I love Mary. But Mary then says, like, I mean, I don't like being around that type of anger. Like, the way she acting is too much. But Mary then tells Angie, you stronger than this. Like, you about to hurt people doing this shit. Like, calm down. But Angie then says, like, essentially everybody else has gone back to Lisa. Y'all sitting here stating all this. Everybody's gone back to Lisa. She done pissed Mary off. Mary said, you said what? She said, you've gone back to Lisa too? Mary says, I'm done with you. She walks off, and Angie's like, bye, Mary. But Angie says, I'm not even going to be, like, to sit here and state that I'm going to be mad. I'm not going to be mad at Lisa because you mad at Lisa. Like, at this point, and considering why, I wouldn't be mad either. But she was like, I mean, I would never do this shit that Angie's doing to me to you. Like, I'm sitting here trying to bring peace, and you sitting here doing this to me. But Mary gets her shit and does the same thing Lisa did, went walking right on through the tarot card reading while Whitney's sitting in there crying, going like this. So they walk off. She walks off and gets her card too. But Angie's sitting down, still crying, talking about, I don't even eat soup. Like, I ain't doing nothing with nobody with soup. Everybody's sitting there trying to calm her down. And Brittany ends up talking about these texts and missed calls that she got from Jerry. So she calls him, and Bronwyn ends up asking him, like, have you paid any of her bills, whatever. He basically says, like, I've helped her out a little bit or whatever. Bronwyn hangs up the phone on Jared, and I died laughing. I said, finally. And she was like, for somebody to sit here and accuse me of being a gold digger, Brittany, you could level up your shit. Like, basically, if you want to talk about somebody being a gold digger, you need to get better at it. Because you so hung up on Jerry, and you can't even get this man to pay consistent bills for you. This episode was a mess. It was a mess, but I was thoroughly entertained. Y'all let me know y'all's thoughts down below if you have not already. Thumbs up the video. Get in the comments. Like I said, once you leave a comment, swipe to the right, hype the video, get some more people over here. I want to have more conversations about SLC, because we getting close to mid-season. So, yeah. No, we not. I'm lying. We on episode 5. It feels like we've been in this season for a while already, because it's that good. These women are doing it. They always entertain. But yeah, I'm getting ready to go do another recap so I can go to bed. Peace.